You stayed silent, but what happened in their mind will shock you. Old Stoic wisdom. Silence is not the absence of sound, it is the presence of strength. By restraint. There are moments when you choose silence, despite every urge to speak out, to plead or to express your anger. You resisted the temptation to chase, to explain, or to beg for clarity. Now you wonder, what went on in their mind? What did your silence really do to them? Let me tell you this. It did far more than you realize. Your silence wasn't just an empty space. It wasn't ignored. It was felt deeply within them. And what's unfolding inside of them right now will leave you stunned. Because silence isn't just the absence of words. It's the presence of powerful internal turmoil. It doesn't create a void. It stirs a storm within the one who once took your voice for granted. Now, before we dive into the Stoic understanding of the psychological impact your silence has caused, do me a favor. If you've ever held back when it felt unbearable to remain quiet, give that like button a tap. And if you're ready to take control of your emotions and harness their true power, hit subscribe. What you're about to discover isn't just knowledge, it's a transformation in power. Stay with me. Number 1. Silence isn't weakness. It's the strength of the iron mind. Imagine stepping into a room that once felt like home, a room you shared with someone important. Everything is just as you left it. The same walls, the same furniture, the same light. But something's not right. The laughter is gone. The warmth is gone. It's colder now, not because the temperature dropped, but because you're no longer there. Your silence has left a mark on their world, one that echoes far louder than anything you could have said. What you did was simple. You stopped performing. You stopped reacting. You stopped giving them access to your emotions, your energy. And that silence, it's deafening. You didn't make a scene. You just took yourself out of the equation. And that's where the power lies. We've been told all our lives that silence means indifference, that not reacting is weakness, that if you don't explain yourself, they won't understand you. But here's the truth. They understood all along. They just never thought you'd stop. They were used to your noise, your constant reaching, your explanations, your attempts to fix things. They expected you to keep chasing. But now, when you don't, they're left spinning in confusion. Your silence isn't a weakness. It's strength. It's wisdom. It's the embodiment of old Stoic wisdom, showing them that you don't need to chase approval anymore. And what's terrifying for them is that your silence holds more power than all the noise you used to make. Don't get fooled by that urge to break the silence. That's not love. It's conditioning. It's the old pattern that says, if I don't fix this, I'll lose them. But listen closely. If silence can break it, it was already broken. The reality is, if they truly valued you, they wouldn't have tested the limits of your absence. You're not cold, you're clear, you're not ignoring them, you're healing, you're reclaiming your peace. The world is addicted to noise, to distractions, to emotional drama. But silence is your armor. It doesn't mean you've given up. It means you've grown up. You've realized that your value isn't tied to your presence. It's protected by your distance. Your silence speaks the language of strength, the kind that doesn't need validation from others. That's Stoic principles in action. Write this in the comments right now. Silence is power. Let it be your declaration. Every time you've resisted the urge to reach out, to explain, to beg for answers, write it down. That silence, it was your freedom. And if this resonates with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and stick around. Because what's going on in their mind right now, trust me, they'll never admit it. But I'll show you exactly how deep it really goes. At first, they may feel relieved, but that relief is short-lived. The silence reveals something deeper, something more painful than they're prepared to face. Think of it like someone jumping into icy water. At first, the cold numbs them, but then, slowly, the sensation returns. The discomfort sets in. That's the slow devastation your silence brings. It's not instant, it's delayed. At first, they might think, no more fighting, no more emotional accountability. They mistake your silence for surrender, but that's where the confusion begins. You weren't the chaos. You were the one holding it all together. And now, without you, they're adrift, no longer anchored. You might wonder why they didn't panic right away. Why didn't they break down when you stopped reaching out? The answer? They're human, and humans often mistake silence for escape. But the old Stoic wisdom tells us, escape isn't freedom. It's just a delay. Just because they didn't react immediately doesn't mean your silence didn't shake them. It means they haven't yet grasped its full impact. People are addicted to emotional reactions. They want proof, not love. Your chasing, your anxiety, your confusion gave them power. When you stopped, it was like taking a drug away from an addict. They may not cry right away. They might posture, even pretend that you never mattered. But deep down, the withdrawal is beginning. When they start to realize it, when they finally understand that your silence wasn't abandonment, but strength, everything changes. They'll start questioning why they feel so empty. The jokes won't land the same. The nights will feel longer. That's when your silence begins its real work. Not through words, but through its stillness. And here's the brutal irony. When they finally realize what they've lost, you'll be so far beyond needing their validation that it won't even matter. That's growth. That's stoicism. You didn't walk away with bitterness. You walked away with resolve. You chose peace, not to punish, but to protect yourself. And now, your silence speaks louder than any word could. So let them feel relief. Let them enjoy that illusion of peace, because soon they'll be drowning in their own guilt, and you'll be long past needing them to notice. That's the power of Stoic principles in practice. Your silence isn't weakness. It's a declaration. It's you saying, I'm no longer the performer. I'm the one who holds the power. And in the end, that silence will haunt them. They won't be able to escape it, because it's the one thing they can't control. So let them think it's over. But in reality, this is just the beginning. Number 2. Your silence triggers their inner dialogue, and it's not pretty. Silence isn't simply an absence of sound. It's a presence that fills the space it occupies. When you choose silence, you don't just leave a void. You paint that space, my friends, with your own brand of power. That blank canvas, it's yours. And for the person left in its wake, they thought they'd find peace. But no, they didn't find peace. They found the unraveling of everything they thought they knew. Let me explain. When you were around, they had someone to project their troubles onto. They had a target. They had a place to unload their emotional baggage. They could blame you, criticize you, or simply take from you. You were the emotional chalkboard they scribbled their frustrations on. But when you went quiet, that chalkboard vanished, and they were left staring at nothing but a cold, hard wall. The one thing they relied on to distract them from their own issues was suddenly gone. Now they're left with a silence that forces them to confront something they've been running from their whole life. Themselves. It's not the silence itself that scares them. It's the questions your silence ignites. Why did they stop talking? Did they fall out of love with me? Did I screw everything up? Why aren't they here to fix this mess? Your silence doesn't say anything. It screams everything. And instead of giving them closure, it throws them into a spiral of uncertainty. You left them holding the pen, but the story they thought they were writing with you has ended. And now they have no clue how to finish it. Imagine this. There they are, alone in their room, scrolling back through your old texts like they're deciphering ancient wisdom. Every emoji, every good morning, they're overanalyzing every last detail. But they're not looking for words. No, they're listening for what's no longer being said. They're searching for meaning in the absence, trying to figure out how someone so emotionally present could suddenly become untouchable. But let's be clear, your silence isn't about shutting them out. It's about forcing them to face what they've avoided. It's about making them accountable, something they've never had to do before. In the past, you were there to fix things, to explain things, to soothe their ego. But now, you're gone. Your silence is the interruption that rattles their carefully constructed world. It forces them to stare down their own flaws. This doesn't happen with everyone. Your silence doesn't trigger everyone. Number 8. It only triggers those who have wronged you, the ones who have grown too comfortable with your availability. They assumed you'd always be there, ready to fill in the gaps, always chasing after them, always putting their needs before yours. They thought they could count on you to smooth things over, but your silence breaks that illusion. It forces them to stand in the discomfort of their own actions. And that, my friends, is a powerful shift. You see, it's not that they're losing sleep because you're gone. They're losing sleep because they never thought you would be. The ego is a tricky beast. It thrives on reaction, on the feeling of being needed, wanted, pursued. But when you stop feeding it, when you stop reacting, it begins to starve. And that's when the panic sets in. Suddenly, they're the ones reacting, waiting for a message that never comes. They're the ones scrolling, rereading old messages, trying to decipher why you went quiet. They're the ones sitting in the uncomfortable silence, unable to distract themselves. And in that silence, something happens. The tables turn. Now, it's their ego that's rattled. Now, they're the ones left to deal with the noise inside their heads, while you stand as the calm, unmoving presence that refuses to be shaken. You might be wondering, though, what if they move on? What if they forget me? That's the old you talking. That's the part of you that believes proximity equals affection. But listen closely. People don't forget silence. They remember it. They carry it. They dwell on it. Silence, when it comes from a place of strength, forces introspection. It makes them confront their own shortcomings. And most people are not ready for that kind of self-examination. Sure, they may put on a brave face, post pictures of themselves looking happy, saying they've healed. But deep down, they're still carrying that question. Why didn't they reach out? Did I really mean so little to them? Or did they finally realize how much they were giving and how little I gave back? Those questions don't go away. They invade every corner of their mind, from late-night drives to watching shows you used to enjoy together. Your silence lingers, turning everything they once knew into an uncomfortable reminder of their own failings. Remember this, your silence isn't a punishment. It's a presence without permission. You didn't barge into their thoughts. No, you simply stopped trying. And that's the kind of presence that sticks. It doesn't fade away with time. It becomes a part of their narrative. It's not just the absence of you. It's the absence of their comfort, their excuses, and their distractions. Let's return to the wisdom of Seneca. A guilty conscience needs no accuser. Your silence is not an accusation. It doesn't need to be. The guilt they feel is doing all the heavy lifting now. You were simply the catalyst that made them confront the truth they've avoided for so long. And let's be honest, your silence isn't easy on you either. You have your own thoughts, your own doubts. You wonder if they've even noticed, if maybe your silence is being misunderstood. But here's where the Stoic rules come in. You breathe, you center yourself. You remember that you don't owe explanations to people who have created confusion. You don't owe them closure or validation. You owe them nothing. What you owe is to yourself. So say it with me. My silence speaks louder now. Say it for the person you used to be, the one who over-explained, the one who sought answers. Say it for the person you are becoming, centered, calm, untouchable. Let the world know that silence is not the absence of care. It's the presence of self-respect. Because in their mind right now, it's not peaceful, it's panic. And that's not your burden to carry. You've mastered practical stoicism. You've learned that true power doesn't come from chasing answers, from reacting to chaos. It comes from embracing the silence, from letting your stillness speak volumes. Stick with me, because this is just the beginning. We're moving forward with even more powerful tactics to leave a lasting impact on their mind. Get ready for the next move, one that deepens their connection to you in ways they can't ignore. If you are ready, comment, "Let's go. Let's move forward." Number 3, they replay every word you never said. In the realm of human interaction, there's a profound truth that often goes unnoticed. The things you don't say have far more weight than the words you speak. When you choose silence, when you resist the urge to engage, you become an enigma, an unresolved riddle that echoes louder than any confrontation could. Think about it. The things you never said, the words you withheld, the explanations you left unspoken become a phantom voice, an unwelcome whisper that fills their mind with unanswered questions. They replay every word they wish you'd said, and it drives them mad. The silence becomes unbearable, like static on a broken radio, a constant hum with no melody, no relief. This is where Stoicism meets reality. Epictetus taught us that the mind is easily disturbed by what we cannot control. And here's the kicker. They thought you'd react. They anticipated a fight, a chase, some emotional outburst to prove you cared. But you didn't. You remained silent. You pulled away without drama, without noise, and in doing so, you broke the pattern. You created a mystery, one that tortures their every thought. They can't move forward because the questions pile up. Why didn't they ask? Why didn't they fight for me? Why didn't they care? These questions sting because you didn't give them closure. You didn't hand them an easy narrative to understand your actions. You simply let silence speak for itself. In a world that craves answers, your silence becomes their biggest fear. The human mind is allergic to loose ends. It cannot stand ambiguity, which is why even bad closure is better than none at all. But Stoicism doesn't demand closure from others. It teaches that you owe no explanation when others create their own confusion. The truth is, when you stayed silent, you didn't abandon them. You gave them a gift, the gift of self-reflection. You stopped playing their game, and now they're left to fill in the gaps, to invent their own version of the truth. Some days they tell themselves you're cold. Other days, they tell themselves you're teaching them a lesson. And on nights when their ego fades, they finally admit the unspoken truth. You stopped talking because you saw the reality they refused to face. The irony is that your silence forces them to confront their own flaws, their own guilt, and their own insecurities. And like Seneca said, every guilty person is his own hangman. They feel the weight of their mistakes, and they twist the story to avoid admitting the truth, that they lost someone who stayed far longer than they deserved. But let me be clear, the silence you gave them is not an absence. It is a presence they cannot escape. It is the echo of your self-respect, a force stronger than any words could be. And if you're still wondering if your silence matters, I'll tell you this. It matters more than they'll ever admit. It haunts them in the dead of night, in the unspoken moments, in the lies they tell themselves. They might search your old texts, replay the past, reinterpret your words, but the truth remains unchanged. You didn't need to scream or fight. You needed only to stop participating in your own pain. And that, my friends, is the most powerful message of all. You walked away with grace, with control, and with dignity. In the end, you didn't need to say anything. They heard what you never said. And that is the path of wisdom, the silent victory of Stoicism, where silence becomes the loudest message, and you emerge stronger than before. Number 4. They thought you'd break first. Now they're crumbling. They believed they had you figured out, didn't they? They thought they knew exactly how you'd react when they pulled away. You'd chase, you'd beg. You'd fold under the weight of their indifference. That was their plan. Their ego rehearsed this emotional dance in front of the mirror, convinced it would work, just like it always did. But this time, they underestimated you. Instead of panic, you handed them stillness. Instead of breaking down, you broke free. Your silence, your calm, that was the earthquake they didn't see coming. They thought this was just another emotional game of chess. The back and forth, the push and pull, the silent treatment to make you crave their attention. Maybe it worked once. Maybe before you did chase. Maybe you begged for answers, for some sign of care when they pulled away. But not this time, not anymore. This time you didn't play their game. You didn't move a single piece. You simply walked away from the board, leaving them staring at an empty space, waiting for a move that never came. And that's when the power shifted. Not in the confrontations or the closure talks, but in the silence that spoke volumes. In that stillness, you said, "I no longer dance for attention." At first they were confident, maybe even smug. "They'll come back," they told themselves. They always do. They thought you were stuck in orbit around them, just waiting for their return, like a satellite pulled by their gravity. But when you disappeared, when you didn't reach out, when you remained silent, their illusions shattered. They didn't expect you to stand tall in the space they left behind. They thought you'd collapse, shrink without them, but instead, you didn't flinch. Emotional manipulators thrive on reactions. They don't want to leave. They want to watch you beg for them to stay. It's not the ending they crave, it's the power of seeing you unravel. But when you don't beg, when you don't react, when you let that silence grow, they realize something harsh. They have no power over your peace anymore. That realization isn't immediate. It's like a crack in glass, subtle at first, barely noticeable. Why haven't you reached out? What's happening? Did you move on? Were they never that important to you? The silence stretches, and so does their doubt. And now they're spiraling in the storm they created but can't control. Here's the kicker. The more you stayed calm, the more they spiraled. Your lack of reaction became a mirror they couldn't avoid. Your stillness became pressure, the kind they couldn't escape. The person who thought they had control over your emotions now sat in their own mess, unable to fix what they broke. Think about it. They had a remote control for your emotions? Pull away and you'd chase. Act distant and you'd come running. But now the remote's broken, no signal, no response. They're pressing buttons harder, but nothing works. You took the batteries out the moment you chose yourself. And let's be clear, this wasn't easy. The silence didn't feel strong at first. It felt like agony, sitting by a phone that never lit up, biting your tongue so hard it bruised your soul. But with time, you began to realize something powerful. Every second you stayed silent, you reclaimed a piece of yourself. Every moment you didn't reach out, you healed. You didn't let their games control you anymore. You realized that the one who pulls away isn't the one with power. It's the one who stays grounded. And that's exactly what you did. Epictetus said, "He who angers you conquers you." Well, guess what? They don't conquer you anymore. You stopped handing over your peace for scraps. You sat through the discomfort, and instead of breaking, you built. You stood firm in your silence. And that's when the true power revealed itself. Now, the one who thought you would crumble, they're the ones unraveling, but they won't admit it. They'll pretend to be fine, post happy pictures, crack jokes to mask their discomfort. But you'll see the signs, the subtle check-ins, the random texts, the accidental likes on your stories. They'll start wondering why they can't make you react. And in that moment, you'll know they've lost. Because their power was never about love. It was about control. And when you stopped playing, they lost it all. So write this down in the comments. I didn't break. I built it. Say it like you mean it. Say it to the version of you that almost folded. Say it to the ones who thought you were weak because you loved too deeply. Say it to the world that expects you to crumble every time someone ghosts you. Because what you did wasn't silence. It was evolution. You stopped reacting to those who weaponized your love and started honoring it instead. This is the power of Old Stoic wisdom. This is the iron mind. And this is what the Stoic principles teach. When you stop giving control away, you build a foundation no one can break. And trust me, they didn't see that coming. If you've realized your power and refuse to break, now's the time to claim it. Drop a comment right now. I didn't break. I built it. Like this video, subscribe for more unshakable wisdom, and remind yourself every day. Silence isn't weakness. It's strength. Number 5. They project strength online, but they're shaking inside. What you see on social media isn't always the truth, especially when silence is involved. They say nothing, but suddenly they're everywhere, posting more, sharing stories, putting on that glow-up performance. I'm unbothered, I'm thriving, living my best life. It's loud, it's flashy, and it's designed to catch your eye. But here's the thing, it's not for you. They're not posting for the world. They're posting for you. Every filter, every caption, every laugh in a video they didn't even enjoy. It's not strength. It's a strategy. They're performing a carefully curated act to cover up the storm raging inside. Now think about the silence you've created. You stayed quiet. And in that silence, something shifted. They lost their grip. When people lose control inside, what do? They scramble to control the outside world. That's why their social media suddenly looks like an all-star highlight reel. I don't need anyone moments plastered all over their feed. The captions get cryptic. They start reposting self-love quotes they've never lived by. This is not healing. It's hiding. It's not growth. It's a distraction from the silent echoes you left behind. Imagine a house that's been abandoned, cracks in the walls, cold air seeping in. Instead of repairing the damage, they slather on a coat of fresh paint and throw a party. That's what their social media looks like. Pretty, loud, but hollow. You see, your silence didn't just create distance, it created a mirror. And they hate what they see in it. They're not posting to entertain you or share joy. They're posting to prove something, to you, to themselves, to the version of you they think is still watching. And maybe you are. Maybe you've noticed the stories, the new friends, the new relationship they're desperately trying to make look perfect. But let's be real for a second. If they were truly over it, they wouldn't need to stage this whole healing process. They'd just heal, quietly, without needing the spotlight. Real strength doesn't need to be posted. Real peace doesn't need an audience. It's silent, it's calm, it's boring. But that kind of peace, they don't have it. Not because they're still grieving you, but because the silence you gave them continues to scream in the background. No caption is loud enough to drown it out. And I know how it feels when you see their posts. The photos, the stories. That old voice in your head whispers, "They're over me. They're happier now. Maybe I didn't matter after all." But let's break that lie right now. If someone is truly healed, they don't parade it. They live it quietly, fully, without needing digital applause. What they're doing isn't moving on. It's masking regret with a filter and a forced smile. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, said, "Appearances are deceptive." And nowhere is that more true than in the world we live in now, where pain is hidden behind makeup and heartbreak is edited with a filter. What you're seeing isn't the truth. It's a performance, a distraction from their own discomfort, a distraction from the reality they can't face. You didn't react, you didn't collapse, you didn't validate their ego. So now they're trying to look fine without you. Not because they are, but because they need to win the story. If they can make it look like they're winning, they don't have to sit with the loss. But let me tell you something. They feel it, deep down in the places no post can reach, in the quiet nights, in the scroll-throughs of your profile, in the thoughts they can't control when the screen turns off and the silence creeps back in. They won't post the hesitation they feel before uploading a story, wondering if you'll see it. They won't show you the overthinking, the rewrites of captions, the endless editing of that one video just to make it seem like they're having fun. And they certainly won't post the part where they go through your profile at 2 a.m. No likes, no comments, just quiet stalking, with a clenched jaw and a racing heart. They don't post that part because that part is real, and the reality doesn't get posted when the goal is to project power. They thought they'd be fine without you. They thought silence would make them feel strong. But the truth is, when you stayed silent, you became unforgettable. You stopped arguing, you stopped explaining, and now they don't know who they are anymore without your presence. Your silence didn't just give them space. It made them realize how much they were filling the void with noise. Let's talk about you now. Because seeing their posts, watching them pretend to glow up while you're still processing, it hurts. It makes you doubt your silence. You want to react. You want to remind them of what they lost. You want to prove your worth. But here's the trap, my friends. That's exactly what they want. They want you to break character. They want you to respond so they can win a scene that doesn't even matter anymore. But you've evolved. You're not chasing confusion. You're not begging for attention. You don't need to interrupt their performance with the truth because you are the truth. And your silence? That's the only dialogue they can't rewrite. Real peace doesn't need to be posted. It doesn't need to be shouted from the rooftops. It's calm. It's rooted. And that's why your silence continues to haunt them. Because while they're performing for an audience, you're living for no one but yourself. And that That's power. So, next time you're tempted to break your silence because you saw them smiling online, pause, breathe, remember. The loudest profiles often hide the quietest pain. And that's not invisibility, my friends. That's invincibility. Marcus Aurelius, another Stoic mind, once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." So don't respond like they expect. Don't try to match their noise. Let them watch you rise without saying a word. Let your absence be the loudest thing in their life. Say this in the comments right now: "I don't need to post my piece." Number 6. They start asking, "Did I lose them?" Silence is not weakness, it is strength. It is the calm before the storm, the stillness before the transformation. When you chose silence, you did not simply step away from a situation, you stepped into your own power. You saw the space not as an emptiness, but as a doorway to growth and peace. The truth is, silence doesn't just affect those around you, it shapes you too. Epictetus said, "Wealth consists not in having great possessions, but in having few wants." The greatest form of wealth is inner peace, and you don't need to prove anything to anyone to possess it. When you stopped chasing, when you stopped reacting, when you stopped performing, you became unshakable. You transformed from someone who craved validation to someone who no longer needed the approval of others. Your silence was a declaration that you no longer needed anyone to complete you. You were already whole. And that's where the real power lies. The people who once took you for granted, who mistook your presence for something they could manipulate or ignore, are now sitting in their own regret, wrestling with the question, "Did I lose them?" They won't say it out loud. Their pride won't allow them to admit it. But inside, they know the truth. Your absence has created a void they can't fill. And that question, "Did I lose them?" begins to haunt them. It gnaws at their confidence, disrupts their thoughts, and invades their quiet moments. The moment they realize that your silence wasn't an act of spite, but an act of self-preservation, they panic. Why? Because they can no longer control the narrative. They can't explain your silence away. They thought it was a strategy, a bluff, something temporary. But what they failed to see was that your silence wasn't a tactic, it was a transformation. You didn't go silent to punish them. You went silent because you finally understood the truth. You don't need anyone who doesn't value your presence. At first, they tried to ignore the silence. They wrote it off as you being dramatic. You'll come around or you'll get over it. But as days turn into weeks and weeks turn into patterns, they begin to see that your silence isn't fading, it's growing. And they don't know how to handle it. They check your profile, scroll through your posts, hoping for a clue, an indication that you're still emotionally invested, still waiting for them to come back. But they find nothing. You are calm, composed, maybe even glowing. But you are not performing, you are not chasing, you are not explaining. You've become someone who has moved beyond the need to chase, to beg for attention, to fight for a place in someone else's life. You've stopped being reactive, and in doing so, you've become the person who holds the power. Stoicism teaches us that true power lies in our ability to control ourselves, not to control others. You stopped seeking closure because you became your own closure. The world doesn't understand this kind of strength. It isn't loud. It doesn't beg for recognition. It is quiet. It still is. It doesn't demand answers. It simply exists. And in its existence, it speaks volumes. Epictetus wisely said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." And your reaction was to choose peace, not just peace from the noise of others, but peace within yourself. Your silence was your victory. It wasn't a weakness. It wasn't a lack of care. It was your strength. It was you choosing to protect yourself from people who didn't know how to appreciate what you brought to the table. Now they're sitting in their own regret, wondering if they'll ever get the chance to turn back the clock. But here's the kicker. They don't realize that when they lost you, it wasn't just your presence they lost. They lost the version of you who once allowed them to dictate the terms of the relationship. The version of you who sought approval, who needed validation. They lost the opportunity to experience the person you've become, the person who doesn't need anyone to make them feel worthy. And by the time they realize this, it will be too late. You will have moved on, you will have grown, and you will have evolved into someone who no longer needs them or their validation. You didn't just stay silent, you rebuilt yourself in that silence. You didn't just walk away, you walked toward your own peace, your own strength. You became your own closure. You stopped seeking their approval, and you started living for yourself. This transformation wasn't easy. It wasn't quick, but it was necessary. You had to stop fighting for their love, stop explaining yourself, stop reacting to every text and every message. You had to stop performing for someone who never truly valued what you gave. And now, they're left with the question, did I lose them? And deep down, they know the answer. They lost you the moment they stopped valuing you. They lost you the moment they failed to see your worth. And the worst part, they didn't even realize it until it was too late. The silence you held was not an absence. It was a presence. It was a declaration that you were done performing, done chasing, done proving. And now they're sitting there, wondering how to get you back, trying to figure out how to rekindle something that can never be rekindled because you've moved on. You've become someone who no longer needs them. You've become someone who no longer seeks closure because you've already found it within yourself. The truth is, when you stayed silent, you didn't just heal, you became whole. And in your silence, you found strength that can never be taken from you. So don't second-guess yourself. Don't wonder if your silence is being misread. Know this, your silence was not an act of defeat. It was an act of transformation. It was your victory. Let them wonder, let them question, let them regret. Because in the end, the only thing that matters is that you've reclaimed your power, your peace, and your self-worth. You've walked the paths of wisdom, and in that journey, you've become unshakable. They lost you in the silence and you found yourself. That's a victory no one can ever take away. Thanks for watching. If you found this video valuable, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with others who could benefit, and subscribe for more insightful content. Your support really means a lot. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this topic. Do you agree with the wisdom shared today, or do you have a different perspective? Feel free to drop a comment below, and let's discuss. I'm excited to hear what you think. Remember, wisdom is power, and together we can grow stronger every day. Catch you in the next one.